Welcome to the start of my dev diaries for Clockworks Framework. This is a game I've been creating for the past 10 years or so, and it's gone through many iterational changes, and it's gone through some playtests and complete reboots, but we're finally at a point where I feel like it is shareable. This game is partially inspired by other RPGs I've played, of which there are many, from my beginnings in D&D 3.5 to Legend of the Five Rings, L5R, Exalted. I've even played Lancer, Star Wars, Dread, Pathfinder, so many different RPGs, and the one that really stuck out to me, some of my favorites are Legend of the Five Rings before Fantasy Flight took over, and Exalted. So this game takes a lot of hints from those types of games. Actually, one of my favorite things about L5R that I would be honored to be able to recreate if possible, but we'll see. It's a crunchy game, but what I really love about L5R wasn't so much. The game was great, but if you ever went to any of the conventions during the time that L5R had their LARPs and TCG going, both of those would feed into the narrative. And I don't really care too much about the TCG side, but the LARPs, the people that were in the LARPs and participated could help frame the overall narrative and progression of the story. And they would communicate with the lore masters and developers who themselves would sometimes sit in on the LARPs. Um, and they would just communicate, and the decisions and the meetings and the what they played out would help influence the greater narrative, and I always thought that was really, really cool. And so from games like that, we have the creation of my game, Clockworks Framework, which is a steampunk-esque world, not 100% steampunk, but more in line with steampunk. There are great inventions, but it's still pseudo-fantasy. You still got your dragons, your sword and board. There are guns, but it's a mishmash of different ideas, with the overarching idea being more steampunk-esque. Um, so, to give an idea of this, we have different setup for characters in this world. In a normal RPG, you select your race, if there is a race to select, and that may give you some abilities, but it's pretty limited. And then you select your, class, and that's where you get a majority of your abilities from. This one has those roles. We call them clans and guilds, but it's a little bit different. We have here the 12 clans, alphabetically displayed. You have Kitsune, Spectre, Garuda, Baylor, Archon, Afridi, Fairy, Elraside, Protean, Deva, Scylla, and Tempest. I realize now that this particular list is not alphabetical, but the files themselves are. And inside those clans, we'll go into Baylor. You get a series of attributes. You get an affinity, things that will be explained in later dev diaries, and then you get some of your mutations and abilities from your clan. These can augment unseen parts of your body, or it could augment your physical form as well. In particular, an unseen one is this one right here, Seismic Steps. Within this ability, the Baylors gain the ability to take unholy energy from their body and drive it into the ground. This puts people, both allies and enemies, all within range that had their feet on the ground, to be a little unsteady. This lowers their defense. Again, another mechanic that I will explain in a later dev diary. But from there, you select your guild. So you have your clan, whatever clan you decide to, whatever resonates most with you, whatever build you're going for. Then you select your guild. Your guild is like your job in the world. It's not an exact one-to-one, but I mean, it's close enough. You have assassins, you have bards, you have cooks, you have gladiators, mechanics, pilots, servants, summoners, healers, hunters, investigators, and librarians. These are not all the guilds, these are just the major guilds. And we'll go into assassin real quick. These are where you get a lot of your skills. So for assassin, they choose 1 body fighting skill, they choose 9 skills, 2 in body, 2 in mind, 2 in senses, and 3 wherever. And they get 4 masteries of the skills they chose above and knowledges. This also allows you to get special. It's like you are trained to do something rather than your guild, which just grants it to you. These are things you train yourself in the art of doing. So like gain the spell phase jump, you spend a lot of time studying and you've learned that spell. There's trap detection, crafting traps. Sorry about that. My cat just jumped, launched herself across the room onto me. Um, you have, substance application. You have different things that affect your skills. Minus difficulty and complexity will make more sense when I explain how the dice system works. But they just know that these, for now, just make your checks easier. These, both the clans and the guilds were some of the first things I did. Probably 9 years ago out of the 10. At least in this iteration. Um, so some of this stuff does need to be updated. There are things that have changed, but for the most part, these are functional in the current state. So what we'll do real quick is I'll explain, because as I mentioned, this is a crunchier system. I like crunchier systems. This is not just a do as you will system. There's a lot of mechanics behind it. Um, so I'll bring up the character sheet. We'll look at it a second, and I'll go back into the core rulebook, and I'll bring up the dice system. The dice system is a custom system that I created to a degree. D10s exploding, that's not new. Rolling a D10, getting success on a 6+, that's not new. But the way I've implemented it, at least to my knowledge, is unique. Someone out there might be able to tell me if someone else has something very similar. But as far as I know, the way I've expanded upon the standard dice explosion system is unique to what I needed for my game, and we'll kind of go through that. So this is the character sheet. Over on the side here, we have your base attributes: dexterity, endurance, intelligence, luck, strength. Here in the center, you have your sub-attributes, which are mind, soul, body, fortune, senses, and knowledge. Favor is a luck mechanic, named differently because I didn't want it to clash with the main attribute of luck. You have up here your guild and rank, your clan and rank. Most characters will start at rank 2, rank 1 in your guild, rank 1 in your clan. I could see for various reasons someone wanting to start without a guild, maybe, or even as a level 0 clan member. I could see that, but for the most part, most characters will start at rank 2. Style slots and spell slots, you innately don't generally get these. Well, you don't get spell slots, you innately get 1 style slot. These will be explained in a later dev diary. Resistances, they affect how much damage you take or resist. Again, I'll explain that more in another dev diary. Shield structure. This is not your like tower shields or kite shields. This is a device that is on your system that acts as a secondary wound pool before you start taking physical damage to your body. Wounds are physical damage to your body. Soul points allow you to use certain skills. And defense is the de facto armor class of this system, but works wildly different. But just know that at a base, defense value is what you're targeting to be able to deal damage to opponents. Encumbrance is encumbrance. That's pretty standard. How much weight you can carry, weapons, armor. Now, I wanted to go over quickly this because the way this character sheet works, especially the sub attributes and main attributes, works directly into how the dice system works. So, as you saw on the guild, um, the Assassin's Guild write up that I pulled up, the entry, you had skills at the top. Those skills go down here into your sub attribute skill slots. Uh, for this character sheet, I made it work with 6, but there are extra skill slots on the side. So if you had more than 6 mind skills, you would just come over here, type in the name of the skill you want, and put in mind so that you know it affects it's from your mind sub attribute. Um, but you can have as many skills in any of the 6 um, sub attribute skill slots or sub area that you want. Every proficiency and mastery, which are these 2 dots, the first dot is proficiency, the second dot is mastery. For every single one of these dots that is filled, you get +1 to that sub-attribute. So if you have 3 skills in the mind sub-attribute and 2 of them are masteries, your mind sub-attribute up here would be 5. Now we'll go over to the dice system. As I explained before, uh, very quickly, this is a D10 based system. You roll a D10, and on a 6 up, you get a success. On a 10, you get 1 success and a burst die is rolled. I apologize for the haphazard way this is laid out. I'm kind of jumping from the bottom of the page to the top of the page. But this is not a final draft. This is just how I got my ideas on the page in a way that made sense to my brain. So you roll a d10, you get 1 success on a 6 up. If you roll a 10, you roll a burst dice. A burst dice is a d4. The d4, instead of being labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, is done 1, 1, 2, 3. So whether you turn the 4 into another 1 or you subtract 1, minimum 1 from the dice, however you do that works. You roll the dice from your sub attribute. So again, for every skill you have trained, you get 1 sub attribute point. If you have 2 ranks, you get another sub attribute point for a total of 2. And if you have mastery, you additionally gain +2 successes to any non-combat attack roll. Because you've trained enough in that particular skill that you naturally are better at it. Now, when you roll these dice, you roll your sub-attribute pool, you add them to whatever the main attribute for this particular skill check requires, whether it's dexterity or endurance or luck. You roll that, add in the main attribute, and those successes plus the main attribute become your final result. Of course, adding in any extra successes like from mastery or from abilities or items. And that's how you complete checks. The checks are set. I created this complexity and difficulty chart to really define how hard a check would be. So let's say you have to pick a lock, and It's not a great lock. It's pretty shoddy. So we'll say that the complexity of the task, being lockpicking, we'll say that's average. But we'll say because it's pretty shoddy, the difficulty is only average for the unskilled. So the total successes needed would be 6. So you roll your lockpicking skill, and let's say you have that in your body sub-attribute. So you roll however many dice you have in your sub-attribute for body, and this is a more dexterous check, so we'll add in your dex, and you get 4 successes on the dice, and your character's not very dexterous, so they had a 1. In dex, your final result, granted you're not a master or have any other additives, you would get a 5, you needed a 6, you would fail. But let's say you're not very dexterous, but you have trained yourself through your guild in lockpicking, and you have -1 complexity and -1 difficulty. Well, now it goes to easy for the unskilled, which is 0 successes needed, and it goes from average complexity to simple complexity, so 3 successes needed. So total 3 successes needed. You rolled a 5, you succeed. There are things that can negatively affect the roll, depending on the difficulty. So starting at hard for the unskilled, level 2, you start getting delays. Those are on a 1, 2, or 3 result on a d10. They delay your action being completed. It could be a minor delay, it could be a major delay. It delays it. Maybe it takes, you roll two twos out of all your dice. You succeeded, but you rolled 2 twos, so it takes an additional turn for you to complete it. Additional 10 seconds. In normal sense, it doesn't, it's in a non-stressful situation that won't cause any issues, but in a stressful situation, that could be a problem. Then you have hindrances. Those start at average for the masters and up to impossible. Hindrances are anytime you roll a 1. Not only does it trigger a delay, but it also counteracts a success. So you roll 7d10, you get 2 1s, a 7, an 8, a 10, and other various non-affecting numbers. Well, you got 3 successes, a burst dice, 2 hindrances, so you're at 1 success plus the burst dice. You roll the burst dice, add those successes in, plus all your other successes. That's your final result. Main attribute added as well. Kind of a slapshot example, but hopefully that makes at least surface level sense. Going on to open-ended roles. This may change. The next 2 sections may change for for the dice system. These were things I created a while ago. I have no idea if they function. I honestly don't even know if this functions properly. The complexity and difficulty. Again, the dice system has gone through. It's on its 3rd full iteration, but for sub-iterations, we've gone through dozens of sub-iterations for the dice system. Um, so while this pseudo worked in the last play tests like 5 years ago, a lot has changed, and I haven't play tested since then. Um, didn't want to force my friends to keep restarting play tests with me when I wasn't even 100% sure if they were fully interested. So I didn't want to keep forcing something to happen. So hopefully playtests will resume soon. I've got a few people that I've talked to that are interested, and it'd be awesome to get this on the table and try and see if it works. Open-ended rolls, though, 0 or less bad effect, so you roll 0 successes or somehow get negative successes on an open-ended roll, has an opposite or harmful effect. Then 1 or 2 is no effect, minor effect, expected effect, good, great, so on and so forth. Ultimate, where multipliers, addition, these are set. Some things that I've created, some systems I've created, have these in place where this makes sense. Um, but there are definitely more open-ended parts where the DM will have to interpret what an ultimate effect would be, and kind of play with that how they see fit. Contested rolls, much like any other role games, highest roll wins. That's pretty straightforward, but the part that may change is how much you get is bonus to your roll for um, -1 or -2 complexity and difficulty, or plus difficulty and complexity. They may, like right now, I have them set to +1 each. So if you have -1 difficulty and -1 complexity, that's a +2 to final result. That may get better. That may get worse. I don't know. But that is something I've been playing with because obviously guilds give you a lot of things that are like -1 complexity and difficulty to these types of checks. Well, in a contested role, there is no complexity or difficulty. It's just contested. So finding a way to still get benefit from that, but not making it so overpowered, um, is something I had to play with. But that's the dice system. That's the character sheet. And like I said, this is a steampunky world. So there's lots of fantasy elements. There's still going to be lots of fantasy elements. We have magic in this world, but it's different. So in this world, there are 4 basic spells that were created by the guilds. They are Summon, Phase Jump, Healing, Touch, and Seal. Um, and there are 32 recorded spells in the Bard's history books. The Bards are they work with the librarians to, keep track of a lot of the knowledge, but the spells themselves also have a lot of bardic flair because the Bards are the ones that recorded it. And we'll take a look at those in a second. But the 32 lost spells, you only get restricted versions of them at start. So all the spells have tiers. They start at tier 0 and they go to tier um, 5 or 9. So the guild developed one: Summon, Phase Jump, Healing, Touch, and Seal go to 5. All of the 32 lost spells go to 9. You can learn all of the quote unquote learn or use all of the guild ones every single tier, depending on how much SP you have, soul points. But the 32 lost spells, you can only learn tier 0 at first. You can learn the first and second tier easily by going to the Bard's City of Suilalun, which is a mega float city that travels the oceans. Um, but you can only do that way by hitting clan rank 4 or guild rank 4. Either one. They are independent tracks, um, wherein you gain favor with your guild or clan and then go through a ritual for ranking up. Um, but if you want to gain tiers 1 and 2 a different way, or gain tiers 3 through 9 at all, you will have to explore the world. There will be um, set pieces created for where they might be, but a DM, sorry, or game master, GM, whatever colloquial word you like to use, storyteller, they will have to go and create the scenario for you to dive in and find where these hidden mysteries, wondrous relics, or greater beings are, for you to learn these spells. And um, maybe you go on one expedition with your group and you are going through some ancient ruins and you find something that gives you, tier 3 or tier 4. But these spells are very powerful. Um, Another system in the game is the soul system. I've brought up soul points and summoning. Um, so the system with the subsystem in the game, which also helps you increase your ability, like for combat or for socializing or for just, if you need a heating stone to cook with, um, you get those from creatures. So inside, where are you? Wildlife Encyclopedia, Basal White. We'll open up the Scorched Salamander, then we'll go back. Excuse me 1 second while I remember where each of my things are. There we go. So, creatures, not like I'm not gonna say non-intelligent creatures, but creatures of this world have soul colors. Uh, Starting with mundane creatures, which are colorless, to white soul creatures, all the way to abyssal black. Most creatures start at white and progress. Some will stop. They only get to green soul color. Maybe they'll get to blue or silver. Some creatures start at purple, where they have a soul. They, like even at base birth or creation, they have a soul color equivalent of something that's lived for over 50,000 years. Um, what this means, default not much, but essentially it's like power levels. A yellow soul will always be more powerful than a white soul. A platinum soul will always be more powerful than a purple soul. An abyssal black soul will always be more powerful than a black soul. And it's just how concentrated the soul becomes, right? Why I went from white, yellow, green, blue, silver, red. That felt right to me. That's it. Just felt right. Uh, no other greater meaning behind that. So we'll look at a creature. This is a Scorched Salamander. I haven't created a lot of creatures yet. I only have like 6 or 7, but hopefully I'll get more inspiration as I do playtest to create more. Maybe people will have suggestions for me. But you have their base stats, their main attributes or sub-attributes. You have their size category, wounds, uh, defense, movement, attacks. Um, then you have what they gain per their soul level. So at White Soul, they get free strike, they get dual stance, and they get skills. At Yellow Soul, they get tough hide. They get a Green Soul, they get intelligence and strength increase, a defense increase, um, and then at Blue, they get fire damage to their claws. They just get more powerful the older they are. Excuse me. And with the spell Seal, you can either one of the characters in the party can know it, or you can bring the soul to a summoner or persona who has the spell Seal, and you can try to seal it into a weapon. And depending on the soul color, they give special attributes. So there will be a generic list where you can take any soul and give it an item, a generic um, ability, but they are also, for each creature, will have a bonus on the soul type. So this one gives a +2 weapon damage to any weapon you seal it into. Yellow gives a +3, and you can seal it into a weapon, armor, or shield. At green, you can seal it into it. You can seal a green seal monster or Scorched Salamander into a weapon and give it that weapon the Salamander poison effect, which is listed above. It'd be exactly 1-to-1 with what they have up here, which is Infectious Bite. Which endurance check to resist. Check is easy and simple. Failure, dex, and movement speed are halved for 5 days. Only takes effect on an attack that deals damage to the wound pool. So if you're hitting a shield or you just don't hit, you obviously wouldn't get that effect to trigger. Blue, you can give your weapon fire element. You can give your shield resistance to fire. You can put an item into an item. Then that item object now generates heavy heat. So you're a chef, you're a cook guild, you want to cook food. This would work as a portable stove. This could work if you were wanting to make a bathhouse and you just put stones like this in the water to help generate heat. There is another effect to these types of things, and we'll jump back over now to magic to explain the other half of what I was talking about earlier. So these are the spells. In here are the guild spells, the 4 guild spells, as well as all 32 of the lost spells. But we'll look at summon. At tier 0, you can summon a soul that is colorless from an item. If the soul dies while it is summoned, it will dissipate and the bound item will lose its special effect. So these are summoned creatures from the souls that you imbued into items. So your item, while it's being summoned, would still have the effect, but if the summon dies, you lose that effect permanently. You'd have to go get another soul to imbue into the item to get that effect back. But tier 1 costs 10 SP. You summon a soul of a white to blue creature. It'll take that form for 1 minute. Summon a creature of white to red, and you'll get that creature for 4 minutes. 30 SP, complex action. Actions I'll explain when I get into combat in a later dev diary. But as you can see, you have these tiers. When you learn the spell, you have access to the tiers, but you may not have the SP to the soul points to cast the spell at the higher levels until you progress further along with your character development. But as these spells aren't super powerful, phase jump, one of the other main guild ones, you can jump 5 feet in any direction for 0 SP, simple action. You can jump 20 feet in any direction for 5 SP, 50 for 20, 100 for 40. Be careful, because if you jump straight up and you don't have something at a higher elevation to land on, you don't get to fall the same distance without taking damage. And if you activate the spell too often, you can strain your muscles and cause yourself to take injury. So there are positive and negatives to these spells, and then you get into some of the more complex spells, which I'm still building a lot of these spells out, but there are a few that I have created, like Requiem of Fire. At 0, you create a small spark or flame. At tier 1, you breathe a cone of fire. And then all the way to tier 9, where you call down a swarm of meteors. I'll change that wording because I think meteor swarm itself is technically copyrighted. Um, but essentially, you create large balls of fire above the target and call them down. The target can be no closer than 3/4 of a mile and no farther than 5 miles away. I converted those into meters for those who like meters as well, both ways. I'm used to mileage because America. The meteors will crush anything between themselves and the ground. The meteors will explode in a 330-foot radius when it touches the ground. I didn't put damage into this. I'm still working on these, but like the effects are there. But as you can see, these spells greatly more powerful, and even the tier 2 one where you breathe a cone of fire that's 20 feet long, that is significantly more powerful than the 4 spells of the guild creation. So, like I said, steampunk-esque. We have flying cities, we have airships, we have a lot of steam-powered devices, but still fantasy. You've got dragons, you've got magic. You know, just a hodgepodge of ideas that I have made as cohesive as possible. And I'll spend later dev diaries going over more in depth of the clans, more in depth of the guilds, combat, the world itself, even some of the external systems that I've created. Like I have how temperature affects things. I have elemental zones where like a storm comes in, but it's not a normal storm. It's like an elemental shift storm. So in these storms, like a zone for water, it grants a buff to water resistance, but a negative to fire resistance. So you definitely don't want to fight the wrong thing when a zone is up. You know, um, But even above just zones, I have basic weather effects systems, terrain. I've built in subsystems for terrain, and I like crunchy systems, but obviously these are optional. Uh, the game will not default straight up be like, well, you have to use the terrain. If a game master, dungeon master, storyteller decides that they want to play it differently, totally fine. If you need something to fall back on, these are always present. Rough terrain, movement drop by 10, quicksand, movement drop by half, plus two difficulty and complexity skill, check to kind of get out of it. Um, vertical slope, basic stuff like that. Um, weather effects, it's a light wind. You can actually negate a level of heat with that because it's not as hot. I got this nice breeze coming in. But then you get a little bit higher, and it's like, oh, now the wind is heavier. I'm actually having issues with hunting checks, hunting related checks, or um, even like a heavy wind where like you got to push into it. It's increasing the difficulty and complexity to more checks, um, and even makes it hard to move. These exist. These are not required to use, but I enjoy having the mechanics. I like the crunchiness of having games that actually have things built out. Um, so I'll go over those. I even have like stuff for sickness. Like if you get the flu, God forbid a hero gets the flu. Um, so thanks for listening along to my first dev diary. I will be doing many more of these, and hopefully I will have some talking about playtests here soon. Um, I don't expect many people to watch this. If you did, that's awesome. I hope you think this is interesting. If you don't, I get it. Not for everyone. If I can get like 2 or 3 people in the world that think this is a cool idea, I will take that as a success. Um, just something that I've been passionate about, slowly working on, and I just have an abundance of time now, so I figured it would benefit me to focus on something I'm passionate about. So, thank you, and I'll be posting more soon.